I'm here to tell you you're the reason why you can't get a job. Yep, you. Being unemployed for over 9 months after you graduate, that's on you. Applying to over 2,000 jobs and only hearing back from a few, you should apply better. Doing multi-round interviews and not hearing anything back. You should have practiced better. You're the reason why you can't get a better job. If you're anything like me, you felt this way after graduating and you couldn't find a job. Maybe your family or friends told you stuff like this and it sunk in. And trust me, it's a hard thing to hear. Your first reaction is most likely to find an excuse on how this doesn't apply to you. But I want you to understand that discomfort, that pushback you feel, that's where change starts. Because when you stop blaming the market, bad advice, or just bad luck, you start taking ownership. You finally give yourself the power to course correct, refine, and just truly grow. This isn't going to be a video about blame or judgment. It's about control. You can't control who hires you, but you can control how you show up and how you build your system. Earlier this past month, my friend lined up an interview for me at his company. I nailed the first interview and moved on to the technical. It felt more like a formality, and when I asked him what I should study for, he said it's going to be mostly big picture stuff and that I didn't need to study for anything specific. So I went in with that advice. I didn't study and I just focused on other stuff during that week. So I was surprised when the second interview came around. It was filled with like leak code hard questions and just hard algorithm questions that I just didn't know. And look, I did okay, but I was so fucking mad at him that week. And I shouldn't have been. I took his advice and that was on me. It was my fault for not doing what I thought I should have done. The problem was I started blaming the advice he gave me. You see, when it comes to job hunting, there's no shortage of people to lean on or methods to blame. The topic of getting a job has the biggest survivor bias. And this specific moment taught me something important. Not just that the advice can be flawed, but blindly relying on it is where I failed. Because here's the thing, getting a job is like a lot of things in life. It has 1,000 different ways of achieving it. There's not one or even just a correct way of doing it. In this specific case, it was me being recommended by a longtime friend. Others can scroll job boards or cold email startups, and some just cold message strangers on LinkedIn or pay recruiters. But the core issue remains, all of them can work, but it's only sometimes that they actually do. That's why so many get caught up in the advice loop. We keep tweaking and adjusting based on what worked for someone else, hoping it'll click. But when it inevitably doesn't, we're not just unemployed, we're aimless. Look, no method is guaranteeing a job. So you have to figure out what actually will work for you and what your path is. And this is where I messed up. I was worried about collecting advice from everyone in every corner of the internet, thinking, oh, I just need to tweak my resume format or use more keywords or just network more and bam, I'll get the job. But when that didn't work, I was left with nothing except other people's advice to blame, which is exactly why taking ownership is so crucial. Not just of the effort you put in, but of the system you're running, how you study, how you apply, how you interview, how you show up. I, like most people, didn't build my own system. Instead, I followed other people's guides, written by people who got hired years or decades ago. You know, boomers saying, show your independence and your gumption, or professors saying certifications are the key, or my friends just saying, just be yourself and they'll hire you. And while in certain cases, that's all you need to hear, it's never a guarantee. None of them change the fact that you have to take full ownership of your approach. And look, I know people have kids and different financial pressures and other constraints that create different variables, but whatever the situation, there are still pieces in which you can own. And I think it's so important that instead of chasing the right way, you start building a system that aligns more with who you are. Maybe you only have the time and bandwidth to strategically apply to 1 or 2 jobs a day. You don't have to apply to 20 or 30 just because someone else told you to do it. And for interviews, let's say you're naturally a problem solver. You see issues and you want to fix them. Instead of forcing yourself into some generic team player script, lean into that. When they ask about a challenge you face, don't just say, I worked well with a team. Say, I noticed our process was creating bottlenecks and I mapped out where we were losing time, so I made a solution that cut turnaround by 30%. And maybe you're more energetic and sociable. Great, light up the room and just leave an impression. That's you being you, not trying to be what you think they want. And that's why so many of these frameworks like the STAR method are popular. It's just a form of storytelling that exemplifies who you are to the interviewer. Start thinking like, how can I play towards my strength and tell my story in a way that makes someone want to hire me? As opposed to, how do I get this job? Or I see that this person got the job and how can I be more like them? And when that inevitably fails, you're gonna ask, who should I have copied or mimicked instead of that person? And that's why you should take advice and guides as a tool, something you can test and try out, not something you have to adhere to. Use it as a way to refine your process, not replace your judgment. Because the moment you do something because someone told you to, you hand off the responsibility. If it fails, you just say, oh, it's because it's their bad advice. And sure, that might make it easier on your ego, but it makes it impossible to grow. Because if you're not responsible, you can't change anything. Because once you take full ownership, not just of the outcome, but of the system you built that leads to it, things start to shift. You stop trying to copy other people's path, you stop blaming bad advice or a broken job market, and you finally allow yourself to start to learn what actually works for you and how you can change. And that might mean facing the hard truth and telling yourself, I'm the reason I can't get a job. That's not defeat. I think it's more of a breakthrough. The moment you take the blame, you also take the power. You not only take control of the outcome, but also the actions that led up to it. And you free yourself of waiting, resenting, and feeling stuck. Instead of spiraling and saying, why not me? You start to say, what can I do differently today? Or how can I present myself differently? I think this is how you stop feeling like you're not enough, and how you take the deck that's stacked and shuffle it. Ownership is how you stop waiting for change and you start making it. I think it's important to ask yourself, what part of my life am I going to take ownership over? What things do I want to change, and how can I change them? If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. I'm making more videos like it. And you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with RuneScape? And the answer is absolutely fucking nothing on the surface. I think at its core, the endless grind, the hours sunk in chasing levels, and that gnawing shame you feel like when you realize you're still stuck or you're just doing the same thing over and over again, there's a lot of similarities. I think RuneScape, just like job hunting, gives you a lot of choices in every step you go. Do you copy someone else's path? Copy their skill guides to a letter, pad your XP stats until your eyes are bloodshot? Or do you carve out your own route? Just like job applications, you just keep hitting the apply button with someone else's template and not change anything, hitting apply to 500 jobs, hoping something changes? Do you chase the meta simply because it's optimal, or do you find out how different ways you can do it, or different takes that you have? Play with your own goals, or have your own fun, have your own story. Handing over your autonomy, whether it's in-game or during the career search, leaves you mimicking someone else's experience. It may get you max level, or let's just say land you an interview, but when you look back, it feels hollow. You didn't own it, you just replaced it. And I'd argue for the career-wise, you're not going to land as many interviews doing that. And for RuneScape, I think you're going to look back and say, why did I spend so much time playing this game? Because you just played someone else's game. You played someone else's experience, and you're going to be like, I wasted so much time grinding. Because at that point, you're just a bot. When you're following these guides, just like job advice, you should take it with a grain of salt and apply it to your experience. Maybe you don't want to do that quest at that time, or maybe it's going to be better for you to do certain quests later on, and that you have to save these items, so you don't do the optimal order of quests as it's lined up. But yeah, the main part of the video, I want to talk about my experience with job hunting and how important it is to take ownership over. I wish I had that lens when I was unemployed and looking for specific high technical jobs, because I felt like it was all on me. There's just so much weight and pressure that I put onto myself in a non-healthy way, and I just wish I had this perspective going into it. And I hope, I hope it can help someone else as they're going through this too. So yeah.